was having this conversation with a guy at the counter where I worked the other day, and we were discussing this idea about the election. He had brought up the election. And of course, the two candidates were part of the discussion. But the other part of the discussion was the enemies of our country. Now, this guy knows that I served in the military, and he knows that I have a couple different podcasts that I do in the things that I talk about. And so he wanted to get my opinion about how might other countries around the world, particularly other countries who are probably adversaries of ours, how might they perceive what's happening in this world? And do people that are, let's say, the general public, do they think about that? Do they even know, or do they have any idea that anything like that may even exist? And if they do, does that play into who they select when they vote for president? And so that might have sounded a little bit confusing. So let me break it down for you. This gentleman, I don't know if he served or not. I don't know if he is a veteran. But he is a guy who is probably a daily consumer of information. And from previous conversations, it doesn't seem as though he's a mainstream media junkie. I think that he probably searches out information and discerns his own ideas from it. But in his opinion, we have, as a country, as a population of Americans, we have a lot to be worried about. And it sounded like where he was coming from was this election coming up is pretty important because the candidates have two different seemingly avenues of approach to address issues like foreign relations, especially foreign relations with the people that may be our adversaries. And the question he had was, do you think that the general public thinks about things like that when they make a decision of who to vote for? Because this particular campaign season, this particular election season, has been pretty polarizing. It's been pretty divisive. And it's led to a lot of attacks. It's led to, once again, this cycle, families breaking up and people dismissing their friends that they've had their whole lives and things of that nature. And I thought it was a really good question because my honest answer is no. I don't think that the general public does think about those same things. I think that a very small percentage of our population as a whole thinks about who's watching us. I think a small percentage of people thinks about not only who's watching us, but what in particular are they watching us do? And it made me think of this time when my buddy Stu and I were bounty hunters, and he had told me that he had read something or watched a video or a documentary or something about murderers, people who were in prison for murder, particularly those who had murdered cops. And the interviewer had asked one of these prisoners why he selected the person he selected. Why'd you pick that particular police officer in particular? Was it just like that was the guy that was there when you were ready to commit this crime? Did that person wrong you in some way in the past? What was it about him? And the answer that this guy gave was pretty interesting. He had said that he chose the people that he attacked by the way that they looked and carried themselves. Now, if anybody watching this or listening to this has ever had a job where you had to wear a uniform and wear it in a professional manner and be prideful of it. Like I think that there are many people that wear uniforms, the first thing that comes to mind, probably because I work at a Harley dealership, are mechanics, right? The mechanics come to work, they get dressed in their uniform and they get it dirty as hell, and then they change into their street clothes when they leave. But I mean more like military, police officers, firefighters, that type of thing, where there's a real sense of pride. You can really be proud of the awards you wear on your chest because you earned them, and you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And this uniform, it shows that. And so this guy had said, well, I chose the people that I chose to attack based on the way they looked and how they carried themselves. And he said the officers that I chose to attack were officers that didn't look put together. They were frumpy, or they looked sloppy. Their boots weren't shined. They didn't look like they were paying attention. They were easy targets. And so like that whole interaction I had at the parts counter at the Harley Davidson dealership with this customer made me think of that guy in that documentary in particular. And I think that we do have an issue. We do have an issue globally with a lot of things that are happening in this country and how we look to them. I think that we look weak. I think we look ignorant as a country. I think that countries all over this world are looking at America and we're fighting over kitty litter boxes in bathrooms, and we're fighting over something as ridiculous as whether or not we're going to let our kids change their gender before they're even 12 years old, for Pete's sake. And we're fighting about just ridiculous, petty shit. And it gets way out of control. And all the big stuff that's happening around us, the general populace doesn't seem to really pay attention or even really care. And I think that that globally people watch that. I think that foreign leaders in other countries are watching that. And I believe that when Donald Trump says things like, when Joe Biden got put into office, Vladimir Putin and other people around the world saw that as a huge, huge weakness in America. And they took advantage. Iran took advantage. Well, not only did they sign all those executive orders to free up a bunch of shit, Iran took advantage. Putin took advantage by invading the Ukraine. And now look at, we have given them billions and billions and billions of dollars. And the only thing that we hear back from are reports of needing more. We need more. We need more equipment. We need more money, and we need manpower. And so I believe that, yes, I believe that people all over this world are looking at America and they're saying, man, what the hell happened to these guys? Because we are not the same United States of America that we were 10 years ago. We're not the same United States of America we were 8 years ago. And even that, for example, when Donald Trump came down his escalator and announced that he was going to run for president, is when all this madness started. Some people will say that Barack Obama started all of this stuff. And maybe that's true. Maybe he did. But I think that if we were to be in a position right now to have to defend ourselves on a global stage, I think that we're not far enough gone that we wouldn't be able to do so, but I think we would really struggle. I don't think that we don't have enough youthful people in this country that would be able to pick up the reins, strap up a pair of effing boots, and fight for this country. That haven't already. But the draft, for example, I think if we had to initiate a draft, it would be a catastrophe. It'd be catastrophic to the success of this country. Some of these young folks, they don't even want to work. They don't even want to work, but yet they want to get paid. They don't want to show up to work. And then they don't want to work, but yet they want to get paid. And like we've talked about on the show before, there are a lot of issues in this country that are very important. We've heard a lot the last few months about abortion. We've heard a lot about education. We've heard a lot about healthcare. We've heard a lot about prescription drug charges. Not charges, but prices. Prescription drug prices. We've heard a lot about a lot of things. But I think that if we really stop to think, we didn't hear from both candidates, we didn't hear about stopping the wars that may end up on our soil or may bring our sons and daughters to war once again when we just got done with one. We don't hear a lot about how we're going to secure the border and stop this infiltration that we're experiencing. Thousands and thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants daily across our borders. And I'll say, even from Donald Trump, we don't hear a lot. We hear about mass deportation and that we're going to fix it. All anybody ever says is that we're going to fix the border. It's going to be fixed. What does that mean? And I understand it's a process. But this conversation that I had at work, it really made me think. It really got me thinking about what might come. What might come later? What happens if Donald Trump doesn't win? What happens if it's stolen? What happens if he just genuinely doesn't win? What happens then? Because I believe that we would go from being weak to even weaker. There really can't be. I find it really hard to believe that there are an overwhelming amount, there is a majority of Americans out there today in our communities that can honestly say and honestly believe that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have the testicular, I shouldn't even say testicular, neither one of them have any balls, has the intestinal fortitude to stand up to any of these people around the world. I don't buy it. I don't see how that could be. And you know what? I've been wrong before. But it blows my mind. It blows my mind when they show us poll numbers and they're a half a point off, or they're within a point of each other. Because everywhere you go and everybody you talk to, all of them talk bad about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And I feel like if you meet somebody that's going to talk good about them, you already know it before they say it. It's a weird feeling. And I hate getting super political on either one of my shows. But sometimes you just can't avoid it. It's so in our face. And I wonder, have elections always been this way? I mean, they're a lot different now because we have things like the internet and we have things like social media and stuff like that. But even when elections were happening, when all we had was color television and maybe even cable, when cable came out in the 80s, were elections always this polarizing? I mean, I guess I didn't get really involved until after I joined the military, but I don't recall it being so damn polarizing and divisive. I feel like there was like this unspoken rule that we don't talk politics, we don't talk Jesus or God or church, and we just everyone kind of just operated under those assumptions. But now we don't do that. Now that's the main topic of a lot of conversations, and it is pulling our country apart. And that's sad, because we should be allowed to talk about it, and we should be allowed to have our own opinions, and we should be able to agree to disagree. But it's just not the way it is. And so, I don't know, I thought that I would just kind of give a few minutes of my thoughts, and because the conversation that I had, the question that was asked, really kind of got me thinking. You know, like, what is North Korea watching? What is Russia's watching for sure? All these Middle Eastern countries are watching. South American cartels and warlords and God knows where. They're all watching America. They all want to see how strong or weak we are, because they know that if they get involved on the bad side of America, the potential of getting your shit pushed in is pretty high. But only if we have strong leadership. If we have weak, poor leadership, like we've had, well, then you see what we get. And I believe that people don't really think about that. They're not really talking about that, and they're not basing their decisions. It's not pulling any weight in their decision-making process. And, you know, we talked about it on the Richard Leonard show a few weeks back pretty heavily, that there's all these issues that we mentioned just a couple minutes ago: abortion, grocery prices, gas prices, oil prices, prescription drug prices, you know, all these things, medical care, all that stuff. All of it's really important. It's all really important. It should all have weight, and it should all have a pull in your decision when it comes to the candidate you choose to vote for. But my question to you would be, if you don't know, think about it. how much weight in your decision for president or anybody, any elected position, how much weight do you put into the things that really threaten our freedom, that really threaten our pocketbooks, that really threaten our everyday way of life? How much weight do you put into that? How much weight do you put into border security? How much weight do you put into a strong military, to keeping these people from outside of our country that are warlords or our enemies or adversaries, keeping them in check? How much weight do you put into that? And how much does that pull on your decision for one candidate or another? Because at the end of the day, if we vote a candidate into office who doesn't have the ability or the fortitude to make the tough decisions when they need to be made in the interest of national security or in the interest of Americans' welfare, then drug prices, gas prices, grocery prices, abortion, all these things, none of those matter, because we won't have any say in any of it anyway. And so, although all of them are important, as I said, how important to you are these other things? And do people think about that and tie them together and prioritize issues? And maybe they don't. Maybe people pick one or two issues and that's all they care about. And I guess if that's you, that's you. I mean, who am I to tell you that you're wrong? I guess if we have a bunch of people that vote that way, that don't think that way, I hope that I'm the one that's wrong for the sake of all of us. Because I think it has the potential to go pretty bad. So I guess that's all I have to say. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just give that some thought, I wonder. And if you have comments or anything that you think are interesting on this topic, please leave them below here, because I think that this could be an interesting conversation piece. And also, how did you feel about the freeing of Mr. Bannon? That was pretty interesting. I'm really interested to see where all of this goes. So let's stay tuned for that. But anyway, that's all I got for you today. We'll see what happens with Mr. Bannon. The next time I see you will be just a couple short days. Is it on election day? It might even be on election day. So do your research, do some thinking, have some conversations, talk about this stuff, folks. And if nothing else, if you're planning to not, get your ass up out of your chair and go vote. Go do it. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again. Take care.